In the silent, velvet black theater of interstellar politics, every species knows their role. The ancient and mighty Crovier are the stern guardians. The ethereal Lumine are the wise historians. The cunning Zeth are the subtle manipulators. And humanity? They are the cheerful, slightly clumsy custodians, the janitors of the stars. For 3 generations since their peaceful induction into the Galactic Council, humans have happily serviced the galaxy's forgotten machinery, fixed its broken hyperconduits, and brewed a suspiciously addictive beverage called coffee. The Council smiles, pats them on the head, and keeps the real power locked away, secure in the knowledge that humans, bless their primitive hearts, are harmless. They are wrong. Today, a human technician named Elias, elbow deep in the grime of a derelict Council waste processing barge on the edge of known space, will find a scrap of data that doesn't belong. It's a ghost in the machine, a whisper of impossible engines and silent armadas. And, with the innocent curiosity that defines his species, he will ask a simple question: what is Project Silent Anchor? The answer will shatter the galaxy. For the secret isn't just that the Council has a hidden fleet. The secret is why they built it, who they built it to fight, and why the mere possibility that humans might have found it fills the oldest, coldest hearts in the universe with pure, undiluted terror. Part 1. The air and waste processing barge Keth's resolve was a stale cocktail of ozone, alien biological byproducts, and the faint, ever-present tang of human sweat. Elias Chen's magboots clanged against the corroded deck plates as he navigated the labyrinth of defunct purification ducts. His tool belt, a well-worn relic from Earth's orbital shipyards, held instruments that were a blend of Council standard issue and jury-rigged human ingenuity. A cheerful, slightly static-filled folk tune from the Australian reclamation zones buzzed from the speaker on his shoulder. Another day, another decade's worth of cosmic gunk, he muttered to himself, not unhappily. He liked the silence out here on the fringe, the tangible satisfaction of making broken things work. The Council paid in stable credits, Earth's economy thrived on its service reputation, and everyone was happy. Or so he thought. The malfunction was in a tertiary plasma scrubber unit, a model so old its schematics were only listed in the Lumine historical archives. The Council maintenance AI had given up, labeling the unit irrecoverable. But irrecoverable was a challenge, not a verdict, to a human from a species that had pulled itself from its own gravity while using stubbornness and duct tape. Elias bypassed the fright control node, splicing in a portable power cell. As the unit shuddered and whined back to life, a secondary data stream, hidden beneath the primary diagnostics, flickered across his handheld scanner for a nanosecond. It was a ghost. A data packet with Council encryption, but of a type his scanner, which was supposed to be compatible with all civilian-grade systems, flagged as Archival Securus, Tier Null. The packet was corrupted, a digital echo trapped in the barge's systems, likely piggybacking on a priority comms burst years ago. Most of it was garbage, but a string of coordinates, a materials manifest listing quantum crystalline filaments and dark matter fuel rods, materials far beyond anything on the barge, and 3 words remained partially intact: Project Silent Anchor. Elias frowned. The coordinates were nowhere near any known trade route, colony, or even mining outpost. They pointed to a dead zone between spiral arms, a place of nothing but background radiation and cosmic dust. The materials manifest read like a fantasy list for building a Dyson sphere. And the name, it had a weight to it, a coldness that didn't fit the Council's transparent, bureaucratic branding. His first, trained instinct was to report it. A glitch, maybe a fragment of an old military exercise, something for the Council's historical compliance office to file away. He opened a channel to the local relay. The response was not from an AI. A Crovier face, its chitinous plates etched with the lines of high rank, filled the small screen. Its compound eyes, usually so unreadable, seemed to sharpen instantly. Technician Chen. You have encountered anomalous data. Describe it. Do not attempt analysis. Transmit the raw packet immediately. The speed and specificity of the response, the direct contact from a Crovier commander over a maintenance worker's squawk channel, sent a jolt down Elias's spine. This wasn't normal procedure. This was alarm. Just a corrupted bitstream, Commander, Elias said, keeping his voice light. Looks like an old manifest. Coordinates in the dead zone. Something called Silent Anchor. A profound, silent stillness came from the Crovier. Then, you will purge the data from your systems. You will submit to a memory audit at the next port. The resolve is to be quarantined. A council vessel is being dispatched. Do not move. The channel died. Quarantine? Memory audit? For a glitch? Elias's human brain, evolved for pattern recognition and paranoia, connected dots that perhaps a more trusting species would have missed. The fear in the Crovier's posture. The dead zone. The impossible materials. A project so secret its mere name provoked instant, drastic lockdown. He didn't purge the data. Instead, he did what any curious, slightly rebellious human would do when told not to look at something. He looked deeper. Using a bypass algorithm he'd cooked up to access vintage entertainment archives, he tried to scrape the barge's deeper memory. The data was fragmented, but he found echoes. Not of Silent Anchor itself, but of the traffic around it. Supply runs logged as meteorological surveys. Energy signatures masked as pulsar interference. And, one final, chilling fragment, a personnel transfer order, citing a need for biological containment specialists and xenoarchaeological suppressors. This wasn't a fleet maintenance project. This was an archaeology dig. Or a tomb-keeping duty. The comms panel lit up. Not the local relay, but a direct, tight beam priority link from the human ambassador to the Galactic Council, Mara Selvik. Her face was calm, a practiced diplomat's mask, but her eyes were urgent. Elias Chen. Listen carefully. The Council ship en route to you is the Judgment of Dawn. It is not coming to quarantine the barge. It is coming to scrap it, and everything and everyone on it. They believe you have discovered a zero-tolerance secret. What secret? Elias breathed, his blood running cold. We don't know. But, for them to react like this, it violates a dozen council accords. We have a frigate, the Curiosity, 3 hours away. Can you get to the emergency pod? Elias looked at the scanner, at the 3 burning words. A secret worth killing a harmless technician to protect. A secret that made his own government defy the council. He thought of his family back on Mars, of Earth, of humanity's happy, ignorant place in the galaxy. I can, he said. Do it. Go to the coordinates you found. Don't transmit. Don't explain. Just go. We'll find you. And, Elias, welcome to the real galaxy. As alarm sirens began to blare through the resolve, triggered remotely by the council, he was sure Elias ran. He wasn't just running for his life. He was running with a spark, a single question that was about to ignite a fire that would burn across the stars. What was so important, so terrifying, that the galaxy's peaceful rulers would commit murder to hide it? Part 2. The escape pod was a cramped sphere of stale air and blinking lights, designed for short-term survival, not a journey across light years. Elias had jury-rigged its navigation system, feeding it the cryptic coordinates from the dead zone. For 72 hours, he hurtled through the unnerving silence of non-FTL travel, expecting at any moment to be vaporized by a council interceptor. But no pursuit came. That, more than anything, terrified him. It meant they were confident, or they were waiting. The Curiosity, a sleek human frigate with clean lines and the smell of fresh polymers and coffee, found him adrift. He was brought aboard not to a hero's welcome, but to a war room. Ambassador Selvik stood beside a grim-faced woman in a naval captain's uniform, Captain Iona Vance. They're calling it a tragic reactor accident, Selvik said without preamble, her gaze fixed on a hollow projection of council newsfeeds. The Ket's resolve and all hands lost. Your family has been notified. Elias felt the floor lurch. The cold, bureaucratic efficiency of the lie was a deeper shock than any laser blast. They just erased me. They tried, Captain Vance said, her voice a low gravel. Now we find out why. Your data fragment was the key. While you were in transit, our deep-range scouts, the ones we don't tell the council about, did passive scans of the dead zone coordinates. There's nothing there. Elias's heart sank. Had it all been for nothing? A wild goose chase into the void? Nothing, Vance continued, a sharp smile touching her lips. that emits any conventional energy signature.
But, the space there, it's wrong. It's too quiet. Background particle counts are artificially suppressed.
It's like a perfect acoustic shadow in space. The only thing that creates that kind of silence is a stealth field of unimaginable scale and sophistication. The holodisplay changed. It showed the void, then, as the Curiosity's specialist software applied filters, a shape began to emerge. Not a ship, but a jagged, irregular silhouette, like a mountain range carved from black ice, hanging in the darkness.
Then, another. And another. Dozens. Hundreds. Vessels of designs unknown to any council registry, vast and predatory in their stillness. They made the council's graceful, luminous ships look like toys. Project Silent Anchor, Selvig whispered. It's not a project. It's an armada.
The scale was incomprehensible. This was not a defensive fleet. This was a war machine built for utter annihilation, hidden in the galaxy's blind spot.
But, why? Elias asked, his mind reeling. Who are they for?
The council preaches peace.
They enforce peace. A peace built on a secret, a new voice said. It was old, thin, and translated through a vocalizer. An elder Lumine, his bioluminescent patterns dim with age, was ushered into the room.
He was introduced as Historian Kale. He was not part of the official Lumine delegation.
He was, Selvig explained, a dissident.
A keeper of forbidden histories. The story the council tells, Kale wheezed, is that the galaxy achieved unity after the Great Reconciliation.
A time of war, then, enlightenment. This is a lie.
There was no reconciliation. There was a genocide. A war against a species so inherently chaotic, so unpredictably creative, that they threatened the very ordered structure of cosmic civilization. They were not conquerors. They were artists of reality. They broke fixed laws, created impossible technologies, uplifted pre-sentient species on whims.
The council of that time, the First Circle, deemed them an existential threat. A cosmic cancer.
The holodisplay now showed ancient, stylized depictions of a species that was never named. They were shapeshifters, formless and brilliant. The war was not won, Kale said, his light flickering with pain.
It was ended.
With a weapon that did not kill, but silenced. It calcified their reality, froze them in a single, eternal, lifeless moment.
A stasis from which there could be no return. The silent anchor. Elias stared at the ghostly fleet in the display. That's the prison guard.
Yes, Kale said. For 500,000 cycles, the Council has maintained the vigil. The fleet is there to ensure the weapon's integrity, and to be the final solution should it ever fail. It is the galaxy's darkest, most sacred duty.
And its greatest shame.
Knowledge of it was confined to the highest echelons. For a junior species to stumble upon it, it proves the vigil is failing.
The secrecy is cracking. They fear that if you know, others might. And they fear, most of all, what you will do with the knowledge.
Captain Vance crossed her arms.
They think we'll panic.
That we'll try to use the fleet, or worse, try to free what's inside.
Wouldn't we? Elias asked, thinking of the lie about his death, the cold attempt on his life.
No, Selvig said, her eyes hard. We're going to do something they cannot comprehend.
We're going to tell the truth. At that moment, alarms blared on the bridge. The Curiosity's stealth field had been pierced. 3 Crovier dreadnoughts, the judgment of dawn among them, dropped out of FTL, weapons charged. A broadcast slammed into their comms. Human vessel Curiosity.
You harbor a fugitive and possess stolen property of the Galactic Council.
Surrender the technician and all data cores. Power down and prepare for boarding. This is your only warning.
The Council had found them. They were no longer hiding. The vigil was over. The confrontation had begun.
And, on the main screen, the silent, monstrous fleet hung in the darkness, waiting.
Part 3. The bridge of the Curiosity was a tomb of tense silence, broken only by the low hum of systems and the frantic chirping of threat assessment consoles. The three Crovier dreadnoughts formed a lethal triangle around them, their weapon ports glowing with a baleful, ready light.
Shields at maximum.
Point defense online. Captain, the tactical officer reported, voice tight. They want the data, not a fight, Captain Vance muttered.
A fight leaves evidence. A quiet disappearance is cleaner.
She turned to Selvig.
Ambassador? Selvig's mind raced. Direct defiance meant annihilation. Compliance meant the secret and humanity's future would be buried.
Elias's discovery had forced a hidden truth into the light. The galactic peace was a gilded cage, and humanity had just found the key to the lock.
But using it required surviving the next 5 minutes.
Open a channel to the judgment of dawn, Selvig said, her diplomat's poise settling over her like armor.
All frequencies. No encryption. The Crovier commander's face appeared again, larger, dominating the screen. Your compliance is overdue, Ambassador.
Commander, Selvig began, her voice clear and, carrying across the dead space, we are not in violation of any council law. We have committed no act of aggression. We are investigating a profound historical discovery that concerns all sentient life. By attempting to destroy us and conceal this information, you are the ones violating the accords of transparency and shared history. A derisive click echoed from the Crovier.
You speak of laws you do not understand. You possess a state secret of ultimate classification. Surrender it. Or what?
Elias's voice cut in, surprising himself. He stepped forward, facing the screen.
You'll kill us? Like you killed me on the barge? To protect a secret about a war nobody remembers? About a weapon you point at a grave? The Crovier commander went utterly still.
The mention of the weapon, the grave concepts not in the data fragment, was a seismic shock.
It confirmed the humans knew far more than a corrupted data packet.
Historian Kale's forbidden knowledge was now in play. You have been contaminated, the Crovier hissed.
Contaminated by dangerous heresies. This justifies full sanitization. Weapon locks finalized. The Curiosity was seconds from becoming space dust.
Captain Vance's hand hovered over a non-standard console, labeled in human script, resonance probe, experimental.
Do it, Selvig said softly.
Vance slammed the control.
The Curiosity didn't fire a weapon.
Instead, it emitted a powerful, targeted subspace pulse, not at the dreadnoughts, but back towards the dead zone, towards the silent anchor fleet. The pulse was not a scan or an attack.
It was a wake-up call.
A ping on the front door of a sleeping giant. For a long moment, nothing happened. The Crovier commander sneered. Futile gestures. Then, the sensor screens of every ship in the vicinity went wild. In the dead zone, the perfect silence shattered.
The stealth field surrounding the silent anchor fleet fluctuated.
For one breathtaking, horrifying second, the entire Ghost Armada became fully visible on passive sensors, a sprawling, monstrous constellation of dormant power.
Then, the fields restabilized, restoring the silence.
But, the echo remained.
A proof of life.
On the judgment of dawn, panic was visible. The Crovier commander was receiving frantic subchannel communications. What have you done? The commander roared. We reminded you, Selvig said, her voice now sharp as a knife, that the thing you guard is not a monument.
It's a prisoner.
And, you just let the whole neighborhood know the prison guards are distracted.
How long do you think that silence will hold now? How long before whatever's in there wakes up and notices the noise? It was a bluff. A terrifying, brilliant bluff.
The humans had no idea if the stasis could be broken, or what would happen if it was. But, they had just demonstrated that the Council's most sacred, secret vigil was vulnerable.
A human frigate with a jury-rigged probe could make the hidden fleet flinch. What could others do? The Crovier commander's orders were clear: erase the humans. But, a new, more primal directive now conflicted with it: protect the anchor at all costs. Engaging the humans risked further unpredictable actions, more noise.
The calculus of fear had changed. You are a plague, the Crovier spat, the hatred pure and ancient. You bring chaos as your progenitors did.
This is not over. The dreadnought's weapons powered down.
In unison, they pivoted and, with flashes of FTL drives, vanished. They were racing back to reinforce the silent anchor, to shore up the silence the humans had disturbed.
On the Curiosity, the crew exhaled a collective, shuddering breath. They were alive.
But the victory was cold.
Elias looked at the spot where the dreadnoughts had been. They're going to lock it down tighter than ever.
We just made it worse. No, History Kale said, his bioluminescence flaring with a faint, hopeful light.
You have done the impossible. You have introduced a variable.
The Council's power is based on perfect control, perfect secrecy.
You have cracked both. The story will not die now. The echo of your pulse will travel. Other dissidents, other curious species, will look to the dead zone. The vigil is no longer invisible. It is contested. Selvig nodded. He's right. We have their attention. Now we take the next step. We don't have the fleet. We don't want the fleet. We have something more powerful.
She turned to Elias. You have the truth.
And it's time to broadcast it.
Elias felt a weight settle on him, heavier than any tool belt.
He was no longer a technician. He was a witness.
Captain Vance ordered the ship to set a course not for human space, but for the bustling, neutral trade hub of Saraxis Station, a crossroads of 100 species. There, they would transmit everything, the data fragment, the sensor logs of the Ghost Fleet, History Kale's testimony. They would send it out on open channels, in every translation format, to every news aggregator, academic guild, and religious order in the galaxy.
The Council had built an empire on a lie. Humanity was about to give the galaxy its history back. The panic in the Council chambers would be nothing compared to the awakening that was to come.
Part 4 Saraxis Station was a titanic, slowly rotating wheel of metal, light, and life, home to merchants, diplomats, fugitives, and information brokers of every known species.
The Curiosity slipped into its crowded docks under a false transponder code, its hull still humming from the emergency FTL jump.
They had a narrow window before the Council's net closed around the station. The plan was simple, audacious, and utterly human.
They wouldn't hide.
They would stage a press conference in the middle of the station's main concourse, the Galactic Crossroads, and broadcast to the entire hub. Ambassador Selvig, in her formal diplomatic attire, stood beside a still-shaken Elias Chen and the frail, luminous form of History Kale. Captain Vance and her crew provided a discreet, armed perimeter, their eyes scanning the multi-species crowd. A small, self-powered holotransmitter, impossible to shut down without cutting power to the entire station, hovered before them.
People of the galaxy, Selvig began, her voice amplified and translated across the frequencies.
We come before you not as representatives of humanity, but as fellow citizens of this galaxy, bearing witness to a crime that has been perpetuated for 500,000 cycles. She laid it out, cleanly and clearly. The discovery on the waste barge.
The attempted murder and cover-up. The hidden fleet in the dead zone.
And, finally, the truth from History Kale, the war of annihilation, the weapon of ultimate stasis, the silent anchor, and the eternal, secret vigil maintained by a council that preached peace. The reaction was not immediate belief, but a rolling wave of stunned silence, then chaotic uproar.
News feeds across the station exploded.
The Zeth merchants saw market-shattering implications.
The looming clergy felt their historical narratives shatter.
The lesser species, always kept in the dark, felt a surge of anger and betrayal. A squad of Saraxis Station security, their loyalty likely purchased or pressured by the Council, pushed through the crowd.
You are causing a disturbance.
You are broadcasting unverified, dangerous speculation.
You must cease and come with us.
Before Selvig could reply, a new voice boomed across the concourse. It was a Grath, a hulking species of miners and engineers, known for their blunt honesty.
Unverified?
I have just cross-referenced the energy suppression patterns. The human sensor logs match clandestine scans my guild took centuries ago.
We were paid to forget. They are telling the truth. Then, a Zeth information broker, its tentacles flickering over a data slate, chimed in.
The logistical records they cite, the quantum filament shipments, they align with black budget expenditures never accounted for.
The financial data corroborates the story. The dam broke.
Other voices rose, a Lumine scholar confirming Kale's credentials as a once revered historiant, a Crovier lower caste soldier expressing shame, rumors from a dozen species about the quiet place, and disappeared scientists. The Council's control was unraveling in real time, not through weapons, but through facts, cross-verification, and the irresistible, viral spread of truth. It was then that the lights on the station flickered. A new, official broadcast overrode all channels. The face that filled every screen was the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Council, an ancient Crovier of immense prestige and cold dignity. "This is an act of profound treachery and ignorance," the Chancellor intoned, his voice dripping with paternal disappointment. "The humans, in their youthful arrogance, have stumbled upon a sacred galactic defense protocol. They have weaponized folklore and fragments of data to sow discord. The silent anchor is a defensive measure against a dormant cosmic pathogen. A quarantine, for the safety of all. To disturb it is to risk a plague beyond imagining.
Stand down. Hand over the dissidents. Trust in the wisdom that has kept the galaxy safe for eons." It was a masterful counter. A twist of the truth, framed as paternal protection. The crowd's certainty wavered. Fear of the unknown was a powerful tool. Elias felt the moment slipping away. The Chancellor's lie was smooth, believable. They needed something undeniable. He looked at Historian Kale, who gave a slow, mournful nod. "A pathogen?" Elias shouted, stepping forward, grabbing the transmitter. His voice was not that of a polished diplomat, but of a mechanic who had found a critical flaw. "You call a species that built wonders a pathogen? You call a prison a quarantine? You say trust your wisdom? Then, answer this." He held up his scanner, now linked to the Curiosity's deep space array. "If it's just a defense protocol, why are 12 Crovier dreadnoughts, the judgment of dawn among them, not reinforcing the quarantine zone, but instead forming a blockade around the Lumine homeworld's historical archives right now?" The sensor data flashed on every screen, real-time, undeniable. The Crovier fleet was moving to lock down the one place where the physical, undeniable proof of the ancient war might still exist, the primal historical records of the Lumine, the galaxy's first historians. The Chancellor's facade cracked for a microsecond. It was the confirmation everyone needed. He wasn't protecting the galaxy. He was protecting the lie. Pandemonium erupted on Sarax's station. But it was a focused chaos. The Lumine contingent, outraged at the blockade of their sacred world, began transmitting open calls for resistance. The Grath pledged their engineering fleets to break the blockade of truth. Minor species declared their withdrawal from Council security pacts. The human plan had worked too well. They hadn't just revealed a secret, they had sparked a galaxy-wide crisis of legitimacy. The Council, exposed and cornered, would now have two choices: surrender to the truth, or double down on the lie with overwhelming force. As the station alarms blared and Council loyalist ships approached the docking ring, Captain Vance pulled Selvig and Elias towards the Curiosity. "Time to go. We've lit the fuse. The explosion is out of our hands now." "Where to?" Elias asked, watching the galaxy tear itself apart on the news feeds. "To the only place left," Selvig said, her face etched with exhaustion and resolve. "We go to the silent anchor itself. If the Council is moving to destroy the evidence or weaponize the fleet, we need to be there. Not to fight. To bear witness. To show the galaxy that someone is watching." The Curiosity blasted free of the docking clamps, weaving through incoming Council enforcers, and jumped to FTL. Its destination, the heart of the secret, the source of the lie. They were no longer just messengers. They were walking into the eye of the storm, hoping that the light of truth could penetrate even the deepest silence. Part 5. The Dead Zone lived up to its name. As the Curiosity dropped from FTL at the fringe of the silent anchor coordinates, the void felt heavier, colder. Stars seemed distant and dim. Their sensors showed the same artificially quiet space, but now it was buzzing with activity. The Ghost Fleet was no longer sleeping. Portions of it were powering up,
great banks of thrusters glowing with a faint, sickly green light. And, surrounding it was the entire might of the Crovier First Fleet, interwoven with Zeth hunter-killer packs and Lumine resonance dampeners. The Council had thrown a brutal, gleaming cage around its shame. "They're not just guarding it anymore," Captain Vance observed, her face lit by the tactical display.
"They're activating it. They're bringing the prison guns online." Ambassador Selvig understood instantly. They're going to use it. The Chancellor's story failed. So now they'll create a real threat to unite the galaxy.
They'll fake a breach, or worse, trigger one partially, and then heroically contain it. They'll become the saviors, and we become the fools who almost doomed everyone. It was the final, desperate move of a regime built on control.
They would weaponize the galaxy's fear to reclaim their authority.
The Curiosity, a speck against the Armada, was detected immediately.
Hailing frequencies screamed with orders to stand down or be obliterated.
"There's no broadcasting from here," the comms officer reported. "They're jamming every frequency with a white noise cascade."
The truth stops here. Elias stared at the monstrous fleet, at the prison of frozen time.
He thought of the beings inside, not as chaotic monsters, but as artists, creators, locked away for eternity for the crime of being different. He thought of humanity, next on that list for the same crime. The weight of it crushed him. They had come so far, only to be silenced at the finish line. Then, he looked at his hands. The hands of a technician. A fixer. A janitor of the stars. "The jamming signal," he said slowly.
"It's a cascade on all standard frequencies, right? A blanket of noise." "Yes," Vance snapped, eyes on the approaching enemy picket ships. "What about non-standard frequencies?"
Elias's mind was racing, connecting grimy barge systems to galactic scale problems. The waste barge, its oldest comms system, the one that picked up the fragment, it used a subharmonic band, a leftover from pre-Council Lumine mining operations.
It was for deep rock seismic mapping. It's not in any modern comms protocol. It's beneath them.
A spark ignited in Hysterin Kale's dim eyes. The song of the deep stone, a frequency that resonates with planetary cores.
The Council considers it obsolete archaeological trivia. Can we modulate our broadcast on that band? Elias asked the engineering crew. It would take massive power, and we'd need a transmitter big enough to punch through that jamming and reach beyond the dead zone. Captain Vance looked from the ancient Lumine to the young human technician, then, at the gargantuan, silent shapes of the anchor fleet. A wild, insane human idea was born. "We don't need our transmitter," she said, a fierce grin spreading across her face. "We need to use theirs."
She pointed at the tactical display, at the colossal, city-sized command node at the heart of the silent anchor fleet, the source of the activation signals and the jamming cascade. "That thing is broadcasting on 1,000,000 frequencies, with the power of a star.
It's the loudest thing in this sector.
We just need to make it sing our tune." The plan was madness. They would have to slip through the Council's blockade, get close to the command node, and physically patch into its systems, not to hijack the fleet, but to inject a single, subharmonic data packet containing all their evidence into its own jamming broadcast. The node would then, unknowingly, blast the truth out on a carrier wave so powerful and so archaic it would bypass all jamming, reverberating through the planetary cores of 1,000 worlds, a truth that could not be silenced. The Curiosity went dark, running on minimal power, using the chaotic energy signatures of the awakening fleet as cover. It was a desperate, darting run, a tiny fish swimming among waking leviathans. They took damage, hull plates shearing off from near misses. But the Council was focused on the grand activation, not on a single, stubborn gnat.
Elias suited up.
This was a job for a technician. He guided the ship's sole remaining repair pod, a fragile bubble of metal and willpower, across the final deadly kilometers to the pitted, ancient hull of the command node. Using tools and techniques from fixing plasma scrubbers, he bypassed external security designed to stop armies, not a determined janitor with a welding torch and a sympathetic data spike. Inside, the architecture was alien, frozen in time, but the principles of power conduits and data routing were universal. With Kale's whispered guidance from the Curiosity over a hardline link, Elias found the primary broadcast array.
His hands trembled as he spliced the Curiosity's data core, holding every shred of truth, into the erase feed. "Do it," Vance's voice crackled in his ear. He initiated the sequence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the command node shuddered. The monolithic jamming signal wavered, distorted. And, underneath it, like a deep, foundational heartbeat, a new frequency emerged. It carried no words, only raw data: sensor logs, manifests, Kale's testimony, the logs from the Keth's resolve. It was a truth bomb, transmitted on a wavelength that spoke to stone and metal and core. On 100 worlds, seismographs went wild. Deep space mineral scanners misinterpreted it as a new cosmic phenomenon. Ancient, decommissioned Lumine mining outposts woke up and began recording. The truth, in its most raw form, was being carved into the very bedrock of the galaxy. On the Council fleets, panic was absolute. They detected the subharmonic bleed but couldn't stop it without destroying the command node and crippling the anchor fleet. The Chancellor's face, when it appeared on the Curiosity screen, was a mask of shattered fury and defeat. You have no idea what you have unleashed." "We've unleashed history," Selvig replied calmly. "The galaxy will judge for itself." The final act was not a battle. It was a failure of will. The Crovier blockade ships, their crews now hearing the truth echoing from their own homeworld's core, began to disengage. The Zeph, seeing a lost cause, vanished into the shadows. The activation of the silent anchor fleet halted, frozen mid-command. The vigil was over. The secret was a secret no more. The Curiosity, battered and proud, hung in the silent space beside the frozen Titans. They had not fired a single weapon. They had not conquered a single world. They had used curiosity, stubbornness, and the skills of a maintenance worker to change the course of galactic history. Elias looked out at the monstrous fleet, now just a relic of a shameful past, and at the retreating ships of a crumbling empire. He wasn't a hero. He was a technician who had fixed a broken truth. And, as the first unjammed newsfeeds began to flood in, showing systems in upheaval, governments demanding answers, and a galaxy waking up to its own past, he allowed himself a small, tired smile. Humanity hadn't wanted the secret fleet. They had wanted the truth. And, in doing so, they had not conquered the galaxy. They had, finally, set it free. The panic in the Council would turn to dissolution. And, the new story, the true story, would be written by everyone.